everyone, and welcome to this lesson on simple interest applications. Let's define a couple words that are going to be relevant to our topic. First of all, what is interest? It's the amount of money that we get paid for lending or investing money, or that we pay for borrowing money. Okay, the principal is the amount of money that we deposit or borrow. Anytime we're dealing with a rate, it should be given as it's usually given as a percentage, but we'll want to convert it to a decimal. And it varies from bank to bank. We're going to look specifically in this section at simple interest, which is interest calculated only on the principal. And to calculate the simple interest, all we do is we take the principal times the rate times the time that we are borrowing money or investing money. So you can think of it as interest equals principal times rate times time, P times R times T. And just keep in mind throughout this chapter that all the given rates are assumed to be per year unless it's stated otherwise. Okay, so that's annual. Let's take a look at example number 1. So suppose you deposit $2,000 in an account at any bank, which has a rate of 1.2%. Find the interest at the end of the first year. So how much money will you make? So we know interest is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. And my principal, remember, is the amount of money that you're either depositing or borrowing. So my principal will be $2,000. My rate is the percentage that's given, so that's 1.2%. And it says find the interest at the end of the first year. So that tells me that the time in years is 1. So all you have to do is just multiply 2,000 times 1.2%, as we learned in one of the previous videos, is 0.012 as a decimal. So remember, you're just going to take the decimal point and you're going to divide by 100 or slide it back 2 places and fill in a 0 wherever there's a hole there. So 0.012. And then time is 1. And you end up having $24 of interest. So like what that means is that at the end of that year, you could withdraw $24 and you wouldn't have touched the $2,000, right? You still have $2,000 in the bank. So really you have a total amount of $2,024. The next example is very similar. A student took out a simple interest loan for $1,800 for 2 years at a rate of 8% to purchase a bicycle and a laptop. What is the interest on the loan? So now you're not depositing, but you're rather taking out a loan. And most places, when you take out loans, you end up owing them money, which is the interest that they make off of the loan that they gave you. So here, my interest formula again is principal times rate times time. And the principal is the amount that I'm being lent, which is the $1,800. My decimal is 8%, my percentage rather, which I'm going to convert to a decimal, that would be 0.08. And then this time is 2 because it's 2 years. And if you multiply all three numbers together, you get $288. So from wherever you took this loan out, not only do you owe the $1,800, but you owe an extra $288 at the end of the 2 years. You can pause the video and try the next couple problems on your own. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. One of the things that we look at and we use sometimes when we're calculating interest problems is what's called the banker's rule. And that's just a method that's used to calculate simple interest, and it's based on a 360-day year. So it's kind of an estimation. We're not really going to use it much in our calculations, but you can use it and get an approximate answer. So it kind of makes the computations easier. So an example could be, let's say you're trying to find simple interest and they tell you that the time is, let's say 30 days. Okay, the time needs to be based on a year. So we know there's 365 days in a year, but if you use the banker's rule, we would just take 30 divided by 360, which is 1/12, which is a lot easier than dividing 30 by 365 because the banker's rule assumes that there's just 30 days in every month, and then times the 12 months is 360. An important formula that we can look at is called future value. And future value is how much you'll have in your account or how much you'll owe at the end of a certain term, right? So think of it as like the principal plus the interest. And the formula for it is amount, or A, it's the amount due, or future value, is equal to P times 1 plus the rate times the time. So A is your amount due or future value. And again, you have P there, which is the principal, but we also refer to it as present value when we're dealing with future value problems. A loan of $1,060 has been made at 6.5% for 3 months. Find the loan's future value. So we're looking for future value, so the formula I'm going to use is the future value equals the present value times 1 plus the rate times the time. So here, my principal would be the loan amount, which is $1,060, and I'm going to multiply that times 1 plus the rate. So my rate is 6.5%, so we know that's 0.065, and then it's times 3 months. And remember, the time is based on years, so 3 months is 3/12 of a year. Okay, so now I've got 1,060, and then let's break this down. So if I calculate this, right, let's do it in steps. I've got 0.065 times 3/12, or 3 divided by 12 is 0.25, so certainly you could use that. But you get this, and then it's 1 plus that amount, so 1 plus 0.01 625. And I, of course, could type all of this into Desmos, but I want to break it down for those of you that don't have access to Desmos or you're using a scientific calculator. You want to work inner to outer. So just look at what I multiplied first. I multiplied the rate and time first and got 0.1625. Then I added it to the 1. Okay, so the inside, in other words, is going to give me 1.01625. Notice I didn't round anything because once you get into rounding, you can have what's called rounding error. And your answer could be a little off or a lot off. So you want to be really careful here. Don't round until the very end. And since we're dealing with money, we'll round to dollars and cents. So now when I multiply that value times my loan amount, which was $1060, I get $1,077.23 if I round. So that's going to be the loan's future value. Let's suppose you spend $4.95 each day, 5 days per week on a specialty coffee. We want to answer 3 questions about this. First, how much did you spend on the item in a year? If you invested your yearly spending on coffee in an account with a rate of 2%, how much would you have after 1 year? So in other words, you want to think about your spending. We kind of talked about that in the previous section when we looked at budgets. And you want to think about how much money you're using each year on certain things in your life, and maybe you could be using it in a different way to ultimately, earn some more money. So first, let's figure out how much you spend on the item in a year. So we know that you spend $4.95 per day, right? And we know that there's 7 days in 1 week. So my days will cancel. And since I'm looking for years, I know that there's 52 weeks in 1 year. So my weeks will cancel. And now I'm just going to multiply straight across on the top, 4.95 times 7 times 52. And you get $1,287 per year. So now let's say we took that amount, like you cut out coffee for an entire year. How much would you have in an account where the rate was 2% after 1 year? So here I'm just looking for the future value, right? So I'm going to use A equals P times 1 plus R times T. So the principal here is the 1287, and then I'm going to multiply that by 1 plus my rate, which is 0.02, times 1. And again, I'm going to take care of this part first and add 1 to it. So you would just do 0.02 times 1. And then we're going to take that number and add 1 to it. So we get 1.02 on the inside. And then we're just going to multiply 1287 times 1.02. And you get $1,312.74. So if you think about it, if you could cut out coffee, or you could at least save that much per year, if you were to place that money instead in an account where you're getting 2% of interest, that's how much money you would have at the end of the year. So if I was to figure out the amount of interest I just earned, I would take the 1312.74, and then I'm going to subtract the 1287. So you made $25.74 in interest. Let's say in this situation, you borrow $2,500 from a friend and you promise to pay back $2,655 in 6 months. what simple interest rate will you pay? Okay, so now I've got in this problem a couple things. I've got the amount I'm borrowing, which we know is P, and you're paying back 2,655, so that's the future value, and I'm looking for the rate. So that means I'm going to be using the future value formula, which is A equals P times 1 plus R times T. So now I just need to fill in my amounts. So the A is going to be the 2655 because that's the future value. The principal is what you're borrowing or you're being loaned, which is 2,500. And then I've got 1 plus the rate, which I don't know. So I'm just going to leave it as R. It's my variable. And then I've got 6 months. And we know that 6 months is half of a year, right? So that's just going to be 0.5. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply through, and I get 2655 equals 2,500. Now on the inside here, right, you're going to have, if I break this down, I have 2,500, and then I've got 1 plus 0.5R. So you're going to have to distribute the 2,500 to each of those. So of course you would get 2655 equals 2,500 times 1, which is 2,500, and then plus, and then half of 2,500 is 1,250, and then R. Okay. Now I need to solve for R, so I have to move some things around. I'm going to subtract this 2,500 from both sides to get the R by itself, because that's going to cancel. And now I'm left with 2655 minus 2,500, which is 155, and then equals 1,250R. So I'm going to get rid of this 1,250 by dividing. I'm doing the inverse. It's originally multiplying, so to move it, I'm going to divide. And if I divide 155 by 1,250, you get 0.124. So since we're looking for a rate, we want it as a percentage. Remember to change a decimal to a percent. We're just going to multiply by 100 or slide the decimal 2 places to the right. So it would be 12.4% is my rate. So that's a pretty high interest rate. And the next 2 problems you can try on your own. Again, if you have any problems, feel free to reach out. That concludes this lesson, and the next lesson is going to be compound interest. So see you for that one.